Hi, I'm Divya.
Hi, I'm Karan. And this is
Thinking
On Thinking.
Welcome to this episode of Thinking on Thinking. Today we talk to Anurati Srivastva, who is a game designer, and we talk about how she got into making games, especially for children and educational games, media, its impact on us, how she feels about making games collaboratively, and we talk about a lot of different games because both of us are interested in narrative games. I hope you enjoy. Hi, Anurati. So, do you want to just tell a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Hi Divya, so I'm Anurati. I am a learning game designer and a new media artist, and currently I run my own design studio called Pedal Studio, which is short for Playful Experience Design and Learning. And mainly I design games for social impact, social change, designing digital learning experiences for children and young people. And yeah, that's what I've been doing for a long time. And it's been 2 years since I started my practice. And before that, I was working with UNESCO's Games for Learning team. Yeah, so that's me.
One of the most curious things that when we met, and one of the most interesting things that I thought, which I didn't get a chance to ask you, is from my experience of making games. Making learning games is irritating. I have no other words for it. It's making something fun is hard. Teaching somebody something is hard. Why do you want to do it together? So why did you choose that as this is the thing that I'm going to spend all my time doing?
Yeah, I think, okay, there are so many answers to this. I also think anything worth doing is not going to be very easy. So it's always fun to do something very, very challenging. But where it actually comes from is that when I was growing up, I got access to some very cool education games, but which were actually bit of both, good education and also good games. There was Jump Ahead, and there was another 2-3 of these games which were they were about learning something. So I think my mom also bought these CDs because it was okay, this is an educational game. I think there were some games that I played where implicitly it was about learning something or learning how to manage your life. So there was this another game. I used to really love this game. It was called Ciao Bella. We had to basically, it was a 2D game and you had to manage this girl's life. And there were different bars indicating how well she's managing her life. So there was health, there was finance, there was harmony in your life. There was and there was something about friends and relationships, how good your relationships are. Things like that, and it would open up to an overview of a city, a bird's eye view of a city. So there was the gym, there was the home, there was the church. You could go pray at the church, you could go gym, and within the gym you could do yoga, you could go swimming, and you could do other things. The overall point of the game was, of course, it was a product of its time, so it might sound quite regressive and sexist now, but the whole point was that she had met a guy, and across 10 levels that friendship was supposed to bloom to marriage. They were so basically every level would end in a date. And the whole point of each level was that you have to maintain your health, your work, finances, all of that, so you're happy enough to kind of impress this person. So there were also all these dilemmas with your family that, okay, someone needs money, so you need to work extra hours, and that reduces your harmony and health. If you work more, your finances go up, but your health reduces. And you also have
almost like real life.
Like real life. And you always have to eat at the right time, because otherwise, your health again goes down and you're not fit enough for the date. So, it was very interesting to me at that time. Imagine, I think as a child having that kind of agency that, okay, these are some real choices that will have to be made, and they will have real actions. And I think I was always very interested in designing for children, because I think there is something very unique about designing for children, because I think, one, as a designer, it's quite exciting to try to look at things from the lens of a child.
When you don't know anything, you have no concept
Yeah.
of the world. You're like,
Yeah.
I'm a blank slate.
Yeah, right. And at the same time, kids are very judgmental, you know. They are the harshest users. It's like this, they'll just tell you on your face कि you know ये तो काफी बेकार game है, क्या बना दिया है, and I can make better games than this, which I want. And then this girl, she was actually, you know, I was making games for Katha, which is a non-profit in Delhi, and there was a school in they have a school in Govindpuri, and this girl, she's like, आजकल तो बहुत easy होता है app बनाना, is 25 USD ही लगते हैं, and this is some 7-8 years ago, and I was like, wow, how do you know all of this? So I think just designing for children, because at that age, you know, if you're exposed to some concepts, you know, even if it's as simple as that the main character is a girl who is leading a free, independent life, getting educated, instead of a boy doing the same thing, or maybe some things which are told in the Indian context, I think it's very powerful, because most of us didn't grow up seeing the characters, you know, that are lived,
Look like us.
Yeah, who look like us, talk like us, relatable. So I think there's a lot of value in creating that kind of media for children. And also, because I don't think I had access to all that media, but certainly books I did. Like, I grew up with a lot of books. So I think that's another thing that I feel strongly about, that, you know, the wealth of literature that we have from India, translated literature, even the characters, storytelling narratives that we have, we can transform these into very powerful games. My first job was exactly that, because in Katha, like, they are knowing, like, they publish a lot of stories in different Indian languages, and also just taking from Indian literature, ensuring like the characters are contextualized, a lot of stories to do with gender, culture, equity. So when I came in, my whole task was to translate that into a digital experience. So I ended up like making a game on Madhubani art, because there was a book and story that was completely done in Madhubani.
Okay.
And it was a story of a girl who grew up in Madhubani is the place.
Name
also,
of a
right?
place also.
Yeah. So she was there, and her story of her family, and all of it done in Madhubani. And the game was actually picking up resources from, again, a Madhubani landscape. So because everything is a natural element in the painting, so finding the natural elements for the child, and then ultimately like a coloring game done in Madhubani. So now if you think about it, the mechanic is very simple, right? Like it's a clicking game and then a coloring game. But the fact that we don't have anything clickable or interactive which is done in Madhubani is just like... Yeah.
Makes it unique.
He makes it unique, yeah. And I just feel there's so much that can be done just with like existing Indian forms, which are, either in visual print or in maybe text form, which are yet to go interactive.
Do you play a lot of games?
I don't think I play a lot of games. I play like games, shorter games on itch. And I usually prefer like games that are of a shorter duration. And usually games that are visual novels or a lot of narrative based.
Like Florence types.
Yeah.
What are some games that you would say, like you played in the last year or so that like really stuck with you?
So there was Venba that I really liked.
Oh, I have just started Venba. I haven't gone too much into it.
Yeah, the Venba is really nice. And I also like Gris, 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 that game.
Love it.
Love that game. Oh my God. Yeah.
It's interesting. Like when you were talking about how you have grown up playing educational games, I think I grew up playing like more story-based games, and even in the games that didn't have too much story, like let's say Age of Empires or something, they would always have like that campaign mode, right? And I would just play that, and I would like read up the encyclopedia of the game to understand what the story is. And it's interesting because like now I'm like way more interested in playing like story-based games. So like short to medium length, like maybe not super long games, or like especially not games that like are very repeatedly you're just playing them, says the person who has spent 1,000+ hours in Dota, but we don't talk about that.
Don't talk about that. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, as a child, I played a lot of Diner Dash. So even repeated games, I played like a lot. Yeah, but we don't talk about that anymore.
No, cozy games are great. Like those games where you're like, I am just farming. Yes, please let me farm on the pixels, not in the sun.
Yeah, in an air-conditioned room.
Yeah.
Let's keep farm.
Like you said, like, there are different sliders in what was the name? Ciao Bella was the name of the game, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, give me the sliders. Do I want to be on an actual dating app? No, not really.
Who is going to meet people in real life?
Exactly.
Tolerate another human being? No, not for me.
I mean, somewhat. Just controlled interactions are better. I know.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of that, I really liked what was the bot love game the dating bot game? What was it called?
A suitable bot.
Yeah. So like, I just want you to talk me through why you decided to make it the way you decided to make it. Where like, first I gave up all of my personal data and I didn't even get the date at the end of it.
Yeah. Did you go retry? No, you were like, I'm done.
No, I didn't. I was like, I will accept this as the canon ending.
Yeah, so the initial idea was to make a game on, so it was a part of a game jam where the focus was on media literacy. And I was very intrigued by the idea of AI deepfakes and how to identify AI deepfakes. And I do know, unfortunately, 1-2 people, like my friends, who got kind of scammed on dating apps. So by scammed, I wouldn't mean financial, but also like emotional scam where the person really doesn't exist or they are lying about their identity and things like that. And anyway, now with AI, it's very difficult to know who is speaking to you for what intention. You keep on getting so many messages and calls and you don't really know if it's real or not. Like you always have to keep your suspicious guard quite high because the AI is just building up and there are not really guidelines for consumers to understand how to use this ethically so that your data privacy is safe. So I thought, like, how about this, that, there is a bot who is looking for love. And because human dating apps are full of bots anyway, they decide to go into a dating app to find another bot, but a bot which is like a good bot, like that'll be a good partner to our cute little bot, and kind of, through choices, help the user understand, like, how sneakily people would maybe try to get your data. Or there was another section where when I created a persona, they're trying to sell you a fitness product.
Yeah.
So whatever you speak to them, they'll be like, okay, buy this now. Or have you tried it?
Or like, it sneakily starts very, very softly. And then it just becomes more and more and more and more pressuring.
Yeah.
Like, but have you thought about this?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then there was one real person. So one real person I actually met on a dating app. I asked them that, can I please use your profile? And that was a human person. And then there was the sweet bot, which was kind of clingy, but yeah, I think it was a good match for our cute little bot. And the initial idea was to, of course, make it like a non-linear experience and maybe even integrate AI into this to make it seem more real life. But because it was done in just 48 hours, I thought, let's just make it linear to get the prototype out. And I really want maybe like in the future if someone wants to build on this together, because there's a lot that can be done with it. Like even the process of making this game taught me a lot about AI, because I trained these personas on ChatGPT. So I asked AI, like, choose the name, this person is from Delhi and should be around this age group. What do you think their responses to these prompts would be? And AI gave me some answers. And then I said, okay, I gave them more data. And it's like, now you talk to me as if you are this person. And what would your goal be if you are trying to market me something? And there were some more options that AI gave me. And then it was solidified that this is your bio and this is your goal. So I told them, now you talk to me like I would play the bot, and you talk to me as if you were this persona. So that was an interesting process. Yeah.
Do you generally like work alone? Like all the games, you've made quite a few games. Like all the games, are you the sole author of it?
So all the games on itch I've made alone. Yeah. Yeah. Because those are all like, I would consider it's like, for a long time I would say, okay, it's like these are art, new media art type projects or game projects. And yeah, most of the commercial stuff, of course, I've done it with people, but till now I've not, like, I would love to actually work with someone on these personal ideas, but somehow they are much smaller in scale till now, all the games I've made alone.
Interesting. So I've worked on a lot of different types of media, and like in many of them I've done solo work. I think games are the only ones where I haven't done any solo work. I'm fortunate, like my sister is a game developer. So we're like, okay, we'll do it together. And of course, like you said, when it's one person, you have to keep scale limited to something. But like when there are two people, you can actually double the work. You can actually do a lot more. Like, what's your view on building games alone? Because like one of the things that I find very challenging is that like game design is very complex compared to like I mean, like, no shade to product design, but game design feels a lot more complex than product design just on a baseline level. Like how do you feel about like just working on it on your own, especially like when you have, let's say, just 48 hours to get something out?
Yeah, I think doing game design alone is sometimes it's, say for example, for the game jam thing, it was more about me wanting to really get out, produce a game, because I haven't created something for a while and maybe this topic interests me. But I think the scope, as you said, it becomes pretty limited. But what I try to view it as is a writing exercise, because like at the core, game design is like good writing and good storytelling. So even with a suitable bot game, I was like, because it was just like narrative writing, right, at the core of it. I feel the visuals, like there are so many tools available now, like there's Canva, there's AI, all of these things. If you want to get an okayish prototype out, you would be able to create some visuals. Of course, it wouldn't be like the high fidelity version, but then I just try to focus on a good story, like what would be a good story to experience. But I do agree, if you want to make it a more immersive experience with like interesting characters and maybe more non-linear storytelling, you do need at least 3 to 4 people on board. Yeah, but I think that's why I focus a lot on narrative games. It's like, okay, it's a writing exercise for me. Like then in my head, I just like try not to think that, okay, I'm just doing this alone. I'm just like, okay, this is me trying a new tool. So like, for example, there was a time under lockdown, I was just trying out Bitsy. So I was just like, okay, I just want to create something on Bitsy, and there's no other agenda.
What is Bitsy?
So Bitsy is a very simple 8-bit tool. It's on itch, and you can create simple narrative-based games.
Interesting.
And it looks really cool.
That's where the Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge game is from?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I have like learned in the last year in terms of like my own process is that like AI acts as a collaborator. Like the thing that you were also saying, that when you were making a suitable bot, AI was like your co-narrative designer in some ways, right? But like, how do you feel about AI overall? Because you're an artist. and like, you're like, I'll use it as a tool. But like, what are your thoughts overall? Because for a lot of people, it's like it's taking away jobs. It's definitely gonna, like, change the landscape of how people are creating. Like, there was some tool that yesterday or the day before that came out that, like, they've shown one image and then somebody has made an entire game out of that image. Like, the AI tool has made a game, interactive game out of that image. And like, how do you feel about that? Because like, generating an image, generating, like, some text is different. But like, when AI starts generating entire, like, interactive experiences, like, how do you feel, think, thoughts?
Yeah, I would love to see how that AI tool has made this interactive experience. Yeah. I think, yeah, that's a big question, right? And I think this is a question that, like, probably the biggest people in tech are grappling with, and hopefully creating some ethical policies like around it, because it's so new that probably they don't even know what is ethical and what is not ethical. Like we are discussing, most people can't even decide what would be a good policy to have. I think even with things like data privacy, where we were just accepting, and we are still are accepting cookies left, right, center.
Yeah.
GDPR came in so much later, and even now things aren't
Tracked. Yeah. We're being tracked for everything and everything.
there's surveillance everywhere. Yeah, we're being tracked for everything. And it is kind of scary in many aspects. So, for example, like you said, right? Like, if there is an image I created, and although I do not provide the ownership of that image to anyone, maybe the like AI can kind of pick it up and say that, okay, maybe create an image in the style of XYZ artist, and then XYZ artist does not get compensated for their work. So I think for those cases, I really feel there should be some policy that comes in where even if AI is using your data, you are in some way compensated for your work. So, or like if there is a repository that AI recomposites or mixes from, yeah, my contribution to that repository should be like consensual. And I say that, okay, it's free or I get paid for it, which is not true. But I really hope that someone or like people are working on this. But
it seems like they're working on it, but who knows?
I don't know. But like about jobs and all, I think with anything, I feel that it's just the nature of tech. Like things will become easier and easier, and people will find ways to make themselves useful to the economy. Or hopefully there'll be universal basic income, and people don't have to labor so much all the time.
Very true.
Because these tools will come in, and in some ways they are helpful, right? Like we discuss in our we don't want like a complete removal of these tools. I think just for the very basic tasks, I don't think you can completely erase like human intervention for AI. Maybe for recruitment processes, but there you would still need human intervention for biases, or like even if it's used for design, or maybe you need at least one instead of three designers, maybe you need only one. But then that designer should be good enough with all the AI tools available and is quick enough.
Yeah. I also feel like, at least in my experience, it's starting to turn that, like, now maybe like at the entry level there aren't as many requirements, but like the requirement would then start concentrating towards a more directorial position, or like a slightly more experienced person who can actually articulate what is the vision and what is wrong. Because like when you're talking to AI also, always the argument goes into, oh, but AI should not be making art, like it should be helping people do, like, automate easier things. But very honestly, like, social media posts, are they really art when you are making it for a brand? And like, our brand social media posts that go up like thrice a day, are they art? Like, they are just automation. They are actually being done by probably some unpaid intern somewhere who's like being paid in exposure.
So true. Yeah. And even then, like a lot of times, a lot of these accounts are just doing it for the algorithm to stay relevant. It's
Yeah.
not even as if there is some real contribution,
Yeah.
right?
It's like garbage feeding garbage to get more garbage.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like if I make one search engine like, okay, I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling sad, my whole Instagram will be flooded on like 1,000 things I can do to, help out my anxiety, go to a therapist, buy crystals, I'm just like, leave me alone, please. Like maybe, because sometimes you don't want the algorithm to work for you. You want to be surprised, and that element of surprise is now missing, right?
Yeah, it's like sometimes you're like, why are you just sitting beside me, always listening to everything that I am saying? And so, like, stop being so attuned. I agree. Like, I want to be surprised sometimes. It's very eerie how, like, so I had booked a pottery session some weeks ago. It was a very fun session. I had a good time. Since then, because I made the mistake of going to one live thing, it's like, here
Your whole
is a
personality.
event that is happening near you. Do you want to go there? Yeah, that's my whole personality according to Instagram. It's like, do you want to go to Kochi? We are doing a meditation retreat. Do you want to come to Goa? We are doing sound bath for 7 days. I'm like, I don't. Sorry that I went to pottery for one day.
Wow. So I met a friend recently. She is from Poland, and her whole focus is on changing your relationship with phones. Like in the future, how do you kind of lead a life which is kind of free and sustainable? And she's also a lot into understanding digital footprints, like how your email usage or your social media usage, how it releases energy, and how like just digital devices change your mental health and your mental state. So for 8 years she's been using the same phone. It's been 4 years that she's been off all social media accounts, and she's uses her phone in black and white. And she was telling me how it, like, she lost a lot of friends along the way, but she started nurturing other relationships. She's like, I sometimes talk to plants and animals, and so she was like, it's not easy at all, but it really has changed her
Brain chemistry.
yeah, mental health. And she was like, it's been such a short period of time, right? Like I can remember, like I got my first smartphone maybe in second year of college or first year of college, but like I knew a time where I wasn't continuously hooked. So there is a way to maybe find a balance, but it's very difficult to do because we are rewarded to be online, but we're not rewarded to be offline. Not in terms of just the gamification rewarding, right? Of course, rewards in terms of like meeting a friend and it gives you joy, or like being out in nature and gives you peace. But yeah, those somehow our brain isn't able to register those things.
I feel like we have slowly, almost culturally, trained ourselves to be unable to bear boredom. I was talking to somebody, and she was like, the moment I realized that Instagram is a problem is when I was brushing my teeth and I was watching reels. And it's like, you are max brushing your teeth for 2 minutes. And like, can you just do one thing for those 2 minutes? Probably not. Like, I'd be sitting in front of my computer. I have like my laptop screen, my extra screen, my phone screen, my iPad screen. And like there are, four things which are sort of like giving so much visual information to me. And I'm sure like that is true for almost everybody. I agree with you. Like, I don't think I started using smartphones until like I graduated from college. And now I have no idea what I used to do in
That,
what was it like to not have your phone around you 24/7?
Yeah, I feel that we were lucky enough, I would say. I mean, I'm sure the new generation will find their own ways of creating, but we were lucky enough to utilize creativity from the lens of like blank slate. And I remember when the internet first came, it was so exciting because it was mostly about creation. Like I used to love the internet back then, like MySpace, everyone's play website is completely different. Their own songs are playing. There are some sparkles and gifs, and like it's so random. Everyone's page tells their own personality, and it was a lot about making and less about
Showcasing.
consumption.
Yeah.
And that, yeah.
Like I feel like Instagram and Meta overall really like pushed the entire internet in the direction of like, oh, you have to present yourself a certain kind of way on the internet, right? Like you're like, my Instagram photo should be pretty, my breakfast is amazing. And it's like, no man, sometimes your breakfast looks like a slop and you still eat it because it's tasty. Like it doesn't have to be like an Instagrammable plate.
Right, yeah. And also everything is also looks the same. Because like in terms of MySpace, it was like everyone's page was different. Or you could really tell, okay, this person likes this kind of music. And I think slowly and steadily, because everyone's profiles started to look the same and everyone's posting the same kind of photos. And then this like ascribing to one kind of living only, and like that being the perfect way to live. I think it's quite pressurizing, right? Like there are times I kind of fall into it, like, oh, everyone has more friends or everyone's traveling more or doing more work stuff, but it's not true. And it's like, I don't know, after maybe many years, when we grow much older, we'll probably realize like there'll be some research on how it has changed us. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like it would be one of those moments where, like, people after 30 years, they realize, oh, lead in petrol was really bad for our mental development. They're like, oh, uncontrolled access to permanent dopamine sources is really bad for our neurochemistry. Probably, yes.
Why didn't I think of that before? Yeah, but how do you make sense of it? Like, I struggle with it a lot. Like, when you're making things for the digital platform and you know that, like, what it does to you, and like, there should be limited access to it. Because I think I struggle with it when there are so many opposites of games, right? Like, especially in education. Oh, like, what are you going to give the kids? And like, parents and teachers are very concerned that, okay, games are bad. While I don't agree with the entire philosophy, it's obviously hard to make a point with people who are totally against it.
I have like certain shock and awe tactics for that. So I remember like having this conversation with like somebody at a party, and she was like so opposed to games. She was like an slightly older lady, maybe like 45, 50, something like that. She has 2 kids. And she was like, I really hate it when my sons play games because I don't know what they're doing. And like, I really don't, why? And she basically said something like, I know you are the kind of person who's making these addictive things. And then I was like, but there are many kinds of games. And then she was like so much, I mean, she also had quite a bit to drink, but like, she was so much on attack. But then I was like, see, but there are, different kinds of games. You can say that movies are bad, but then there are so many different kinds of movies, right? Like Discovery Channel is also making movies only. And then she's just like, oh, that's interesting. I was like, so I don't know if you've played this game, but like there is this game called That Dragon Cancer.
Yeah, I played it. Yeah, I've heard
you played. So I don't have the courage to play the game. But I just describe like, the synopsis of the game to people, that like it's made by a father who lost their child to like cancer. And it's about a parent taking care of like a newborn who they know is not going to survive for too long. Then like she's just like stunned. I'm like that is also a game. Like there are games that are made which are like that as well. And then she's like, oh, I never knew. I was like, yeah, sure. Like most of the things that you hear about are like, games that are about shooting and games that are about that. And then maybe like I talk a little bit more deeply about, so there are studies on like, how kids who have played games, their failure resistance is a lot higher.
Resilience.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just then start talking about things like, what teaches you that it's okay to fail and you should get up and try again. Like your classes and courses and exams don't teach you that. Your exam actually labels you as a failure. If you got a bad grade, you are a failure, right? Like, oh, you are a second ranker always, or like you will never be in the top 3. Like that is what our examination system teaches us. But like games actually teach you go again and again and again and things. And then I think like it's just, I mean, it's slightly easier when you have gone to a grade college and you just tell people that like I play games and then I still did this and now I'm doing that. Like somehow it's almost like proof by action that like, yeah, I did all of those things. I also personally feel like when I've been making things, I have gotten into a lot of arguments with people around the ethical dilemma part of it. And like I'm very much myself on the side of, oh, you should take ownership of the thing that you are making. You should feel the ethical and moral responsibility. Like, for example, what you are saying, right? Like, you're making games for children. You could very easily make them addicted, right? Nobody, like, it's on your shoulders to make sure that they're not addicted as the maker of the game. And I feel like when I have been in those teams where I'm making things, I'm always like, no, but we need to make sure that it's not addictive. It doesn't always go well. I've had like teams where the founders were just like, but why wouldn't we want people to be addicted to our product? And then at that point, you're like, okay, now do I stay with these people or do I like, move out? Do I want to change the system from the inside? Or do I want to like, go out and work with something and amplify something that is more ethical? So that's how tricky thing, but like that's how I would say I try to balance it.
No, it's completely right. And I think, of course, parents are justified with their arguments about higher screen time for kids. But the truth is also, that if they are to be on the internet anyway, if they are to be watching or seeing their phone anyway, why not make it for something fun? And because I have always been working in social emotional learning or games for social impact, that is still an easier argument because if you go in the metro or anywhere you go, you see a lot of parents handing over, just their phones to their child, and God knows what kind of reels that like 4-year-old, 5-year-old is just watching. It's like horrifying. I'm like, oh my God, I want to intervene what this child is watching. But they're already on their phones. If there can be something that can be used for good, and like you said, there are some mechanics that you can intentionally put to have like stopping points or to say that, okay, this is enough for a day, maybe come again later or come tomorrow. So even if it's something that, it's behavioral, maybe a game on mindfulness, it's like it has a beginning and an end, and, they maybe come on another day, and maybe slower mechanics, or the focus is not on competing with someone all the time.
There is a thread that, like, as you were speaking, I just got reminded of. Many years ago, I had seen this talk on using tend and befriend mechanics. Okay, so are you aware of tend and befriend mechanics? You are, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I had seen a talk by Pre-Code. She used to be, at that point, she used to be a engineer at Ubisoft. And then I became Twitter friends with her, and then I became real friends with her because I was like, you are so cool. But like she was just talking about at that point how like they are trying to create digital experiences on the tend and befriend mechanic rather than on an adrenaline response. And like, how do you generate that kindness and like, generate that friendliness rather than, because for many people, warmth is what they are seeking. They're really not seeking, like, like you said, competition is not the point. Actually, connection is the point. That was also very interesting because like once I saw that talk, like, I started going down that rabbit hole and just like exploring more of those kind of mechanics. And that really changed how my design work. Like, sort of like that informed a lot of how I did my design thinking afterwards.
Yeah. In fact, very similar to this. So just 2 years ago, so I also keep on doing some like research work on like how games can be used on learning and things like that. And I collaborated with this friend of mine from UCSC who's doing a PhD on games and games for learning specifically. And it was more of a review paper where we were trying to find out a common thread for mechanics and storytelling for games that can be used to inculcate compassionate leadership. So like, which was quite opposed to like, because when you say leader, you kind of imagine in the context of games at least, like, oh, you'll be imagining someone just leading people and like there's a competition and maybe there's some adrenaline rush and things like that. But we want to see if like compassionate leadership could be so that we took two strands. Like there is one self-compassion, compassion for others, and then there are leadership qualities. And then we came up with set of mechanics, with which where ten and befriend was one of them, and there were some idle mechanics. So yeah, we did come up with a few common threads, and we did go through different kinds of games for this. So there was also Overcooked. It's a co-op game, and also very different games. There's also Kind of World. So very very simple idle mechanic game where you have to maybe plant a tree every day, and every day it blossoms and it gives you a message, and maybe you track your emotions and things like that. Just to identify different kinds of mechanics that exist in these games. But also, I think a lot of what I learned was from my time with UNESCO MGIP, where our whole focus was on just finding commercial games that could be used for social emotional learning. Yeah.
Interesting. That makes me think of, have you heard of the game Death Stranding?
No, I haven't.
It's a post-apocalyptic game, like kind of dark world. And there is almost like this acid rain that ages everything that it touches. So you build anything, it will, like, if you are in the rain, you will start aging. And what your character is doing is you are transporting boxes, like you're a glorified courier service. And the game is beautifully made, like proper AAA game. But one of my friends, he played that game quite a bit. And his favorite part was, while you can't co-op in the game, right? Like you can't play with other people live. But if somebody else has made a road, you can use that road.
Oh, wow.
Right? So there is this community sense of building resources in the world. That you're just making things easier and easier for other people. So you might use the road once or twice, but there might be 100 other people who have used that road, right? And as you were speaking about sort of these more collaborative approaches to just mechanics that can encourage more collaborative things, these kind of things where it's almost it's like real world, right? I don't know who has made the road that I'm using, but I am using it every day. I think Death Stranding tried to capture that, except it's other players who are doing it.
Wow, that's so beautiful. I'm going to check this game out. Yeah.
Yeah. It I couldn't get into it because it's a little bit too slow for my taste. But but it just theoretically, it sounds really interesting.
Yeah. Even Bury Me My Love. Have you played that game? That's also.
I've heard of it, but no, tell me about it.
So it's a game which is set on the refugee crisis migration issue, and you play as the husband of a wife named Noor, who is trying to flee Syria. And that game has about 28 different endings. And it's also very it actually feels like they have a nice bond. She's sending funny selfies, and sometimes, oh, should I go to the bar or should I just go to the restaurant, and simple decisions like that. But then she's also seeking his help to make some more important decisions, or whether I should bribe this person and get on this ship and flee, or should I just go back, and basically larger decisions like these. And it's your job to help her make those decisions. And it's very interesting because there are times when she doesn't reply. So in real life, your loved ones don't reply and you're anxiously waiting. So if you would actually, there's no way you can play the game okay, I'll just finish it off in 2 hours. Because I think if I would say that you can actually finish it in 1 hour if it were to be back to back. But because there are these pauses where 3 hours pass by and you don't receive a text back. So you're forced to just maybe keep your game down and just be wait in that anxiety of what happened to her. That mechanic was really interesting. And also the game conception was actually by a journalist who was covering Syria. And I think reportage itself, it's so daunting. How do you explain all these lived experiences? So he spoke with a lot of people who went through these themselves and kind of built this experience. Yeah, so it's a very
that sounds amazing. I have chills.
Yeah, it's a really interesting game. Yeah. Even Dot's Home is good. That's a free game. And basically, it's about how Black people were denied to own property in the States and how hard it was for them to keep their homes. And people were telling them to move out of certain areas, which was just meant like because they wanted to have like white colonies and things like that. So this is like this girl is in like she's the third generation of the family, and there's a way for you to keep switching back to the past and then coming back to the present. Although she's like a teenage, like I don't care, I just want to live a life kind of a person, but she's forced to kind of see what happened to her parents and what happened to her grandparents and kind of make sense of what is happening now. So I found that pretty interesting, and also just to see because they don't utilize too many landscapes, just the home and there are streets outside and maybe like the school area, but to put that in like three eras, like the same scenes painted, that's really, I found that very interesting.
Yeah, like some of these narrative experiences are so, I don't know, like I think I felt similarly when I played Gone Home.
Oh, yeah.
Because that also is like, you just are in this space and it's unfamiliar, but also like, there isn't much gameplay. You're walking around and reading things, right? But it's just very interesting how the game is able to like just make you feel so much. Even these games you're describing, I'm definitely gonna check them out because like it just feels like you would end up feeling so much more because you're immersed in this thing.
Yeah. And also I think the music and the visuals, everything just puts you in that experience. So
do you want to make these kind of games?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I would love to maybe make something, maybe exploring Delhi's history, or like, I keep on thinking about like, oh, how this place looked like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And there have been so many drastic changes. It's very powerful to put things in this perspective. So I really do want to explore something around culture and, narrative experiences told through digital games.
That would be fun. I would love to play it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's really powerful, and I think sometimes, and I think games become more powerful because you feel like you have that agency. So like the empathic response becomes higher because you feel that you made the choice. So like if Noor goes missing, you really feel that, oh God, like you gave a response which. So now she's no more or she's gone missing and things like that. So it's like very, very impactful.
Theme music is by Akshay Ramuhalli of BTRPT Music. Editing is by Beatnik.
My professional work is available at www.anuratisrivastva.com, which is ANURATISRIVASTVA.com. And you could also just message me on Instagram. I'm at @Anurati_Srivastava.